The day Deborah was born, the hospital became a graveyard. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She simply opened her eyes and the world went silent. The pediatrician, who was first to cradle her, collapsed instantly. The nurse who screamed for help was next. Then the second nurse, then the cleaner passing by the door. One by one, they fell like dominoes. Only her mother and father survived because they turned their faces away and refused to look. In that chilling moment, as alarms blared and cries echoed, Deborah's life was sealed with a curse. Her parents never spoke of it to anyone. They buried the hospital report, moved to a smaller town, and erased themselves from the system. They built a world where their daughter's gaze would never again meet another person's. A custom designed goggle, thick, tinted, and sealed with a security clasp, was strapped to her tiny head before she could walk. It had no sides, no weak points, no reflections, a vault around her vision. She grew up seeing the world through filtered darkness, no mirrors, no shiny objects. Her toys were soft, her room padded, and every visitor, even the postman, wore sunglasses just to drop off a package. She never went to school. Her mother taught her from home. But Deborah was no ordinary child. She was brilliant, observant, and heartbreakingly curious. From the window of their gated house, she would watch the neighborhood kids chase kites, ride bicycles, play hide and seek. Her breath would fog the glass as she pressed against it, silent, aching. She longed to be normal, and when she turned 18, her mother sat her down one rainy evening, took her hands gently, and said, "You can't stay hidden forever. The world is dangerous, yes, but you deserve to live in it." And so, with the most advanced version of her goggles secured tightly, Deborah enrolled in Uni Abuja. Deborah was not like anyone on campus, not because she wanted to be, but because she had to be. Her dark, tightly bound goggles were impossible to ignore, and students noticed. At first they whispered, then the mocking began. "She's probably hiding a lazy eye," someone muttered in the cafeteria. "Maybe she's blind and it's a camera," another laughed. But the cruelest of all was Daisy, queen of sass, selfish sorceress, and ruler of reputations. "Are you sure she even has eyes?" Daisy would say loudly, tossing a straight black wave like it was a weapon. "For all we know, she's a robot sent from Mars." Her minions, Bella and Trish, crackled beside her. Deborah didn't respond. She couldn't. Any reaction only fueled the fire. But deep inside, it hurt. She'd eat alone under a mango tree behind the lecture hall. She would walk fast between classes, head low. She didn't want trouble, she just wanted peace. Until the day Simon walked into her life. Simon was golden, head of the debate team, top in his law class, and probably the only reason half of the girls attended the weekly student leadership meetings. Tall, smooth-talking, thoughtful, and always smiling. He was everything Deborah was not, which is why she was shocked when he sat beside her in class one morning and whispered, "Hi, I'm Simon and I like your pen." She blinked under her goggles. "It's just a pen." "Yeah, but orange." "Yeah, but it's orange. Nobody uses orange pens unless they are brave." She tilted her head. Was this a joke? He grinned. "Mind if I borrow it?" "No. No as in I can't, or no as in you mind." She sighed and slid the pen over. From that day, Simon sat next to her every chance he got. He would walk out to the cafeteria, carry her books, make corny jokes like, "Do your goggles have Wi-Fi?" And slowly, carefully, he chipped away at the walls around her. Deborah began to smile again, real wild smiles, even if no one could see her eyes. "You know," she said once, "most people are afraid of me." "I'm not most people," he said softly, and he meant it. Or so she thought. What Deborah didn't know was this. Daisy had history with Simon. They once dated, once shared secrets, once had a child Daisy kept hidden in a foster home to protect her reputation. And now, with Simon running for student union president, she held the power to ruin everything. All you have to do is take off her goggles. Daisy hissed at him behind the library one evening. Or I tell everyone about the baby. Your baby. She's not a freak, Simon whispered back, his fists clenched. She's kind, smart, she hasn't hurt anyone. Daisy's eyes flared. You think people will believe her over me? Simon was trapped and he knew it. One Friday, he invited Deborah to a study session at her lodge. I can't, she hesitated. My place isn't tidy. I don't mind, he said gently. It's just studying. She nodded. They laughed over law books, shared biscuits and soft drinks, talked about old movies she had never seen. Can I get some juice? He asked. Sure. When she returned, he accidentally spilled it on himself. Ah, this shirt is cursed. Please help me find a rag. She rushed to the kitchen. That was when he slipped the pill into her drink. Here, she said, handing him a towel. Thanks. He watched as she sipped the juice. She yawned soon after. I'm so sleepy, she murmured. Rest, he whispered. I'll leave after you sleep. But he didn't leave. As she lay curled on the couch, breathing softly, Simon hesitated. His hand trembled as it reached for the clasp behind her head. One snap, another, the goggles fell away. He gasped. Even closed, her eyes were divine. Lashes long, skin flawless. He whispered, You are beautiful, and lifted his phone to take the picture. Then she stared. Her eyes fluttered open. Simon! Their gazes met. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, his pupils dilated, his mouth fell open, his phone dropped. He gasped for air, clutched his chest, and collapsed. Screams. A neighbor had heard the thud and rushed in. By the time help came, Simon was gone. The police came, the school erupted in panic. But after reviewing CCTV, testimonies, and the autopsy, which showed no physical trauma, they ruled it as an unexplained cardiac arrest. Deborah was cleared, but feared. Whispers followed her like a shadow. Witch, demon, dead girl. Deborah wept alone in her room that night, not just for Simon, but for the cruel realization that even the person she trusted had used her. The entire school went wild. Rumors raced faster than light. Group chats exploded. Threads on Twitter, posts on Instagram, videos on TikTok, all buzzing with the same chilling question. What really happened to Simon? The police came. They questioned Deborah for hours, examined her room, searched for drugs, weapons, anything. But the autopsy showed no physical cause of death, no poison, no struggle. His heart just stopped, as if it saw something it couldn't comprehend. Deborah was terrified, shaking, grief-stricken, heartbroken that the one person she thought saw her had been lying and was now dead. But there was no evidence, and so, reluctantly, the authorities let her go. The students, however, weren't as merciful. She's a witch. I heard she cursed him for breaking her heart. That's why she wears those goggles. Her eyes can kill. Everywhere Deborah went, whispers followed. Doors slammed shut. People avoided her like a plague. Even lecturers paused mid-sentence when she entered a class. For weeks, she withdrew, stopped attending lectures. She barely ate. Her mother pleaded through calls and messages, her voice trembling with concern. One evening, curled up on her bed, Deborah sobbed into her pillow. I don't belong here, she whispered over the phone. But her mother, brave, weathered, and wise, answered firmly, You were not born to hide, Deborah. You were born to survive and to be seen. Those words lit a fire. She wiped her tears, cleaned her room, and the next morning, she walked back into the class, goggles on, chin high. That was the day Dennis arrived. Tall, calm, broad-shouldered, and brown-skinned like morning cocoa. He carried a quietness that made people lean in, not away. He transferred students from the east. No one knew much about him, but his presence felt like gravity. Naturally, Daisy noticed. She approached him in her usual way. Soft voice, flirtatious eyes, a touch on his wrist. But Dennis only smiled politely and walked away. Twice, then a third time. The rejection pierced Daisy's ego. And then she saw him, sitting under the almond tree beside Deborah, laughing, sharing a book, nodding to her as she explained something from Things Fall Apart. Daisy was livid. She cornered Deborah in the bathroom later that week, alone. "You think you've won?" she spat. "You killed Simon, now you're after Dennis." Deborah stared at her through the mirror, calm, unafraid. "No," she said, voice steady. "I only want peace, you want control." Daisy stepped closer, hissing. "No one likes you. You are a freak hiding behind tinted glasses." That's when Deborah snapped. She turned slowly to face her. "At least I don't hide behind makeup, lies, and fake friends. You are the real ghost here." Daisy laughed bitterly, but Deborah wasn't finished. "By the way, how's that third year course you failed twice? Still claiming you are graduating this semester?" Daisy's face drained of color. "You've been here for 6 years, Daisy. Pretending, bullying others to distract from your own shame." Silence fell, then came footsteps. Students who had overheard, phones in hands, eyes wide. That day, everything changed. Suddenly, Deborah wasn't just the course girl. She was the one who stood up to Daisy. The one who had the courage to face monsters without ever raising her voice. Her friendship with Dennis blossomed. They studied together, debated, shared music and poetry. They even cooked jollof in his tiny hostel kitchen one rainy afternoon, laughing over who chopped onions better. But one moment stood out. They sat under the moonlight outside the lecture hall after prep class. Dennis turned to her, voice gentle. "Deborah, what if I looked into your eyes and nothing happened?" She shook her head immediately. "No one's ever survived it." He smiled. "But what if I'm not just anyone?" Her heart fluttered, but fear still lived inside her. She looked away. Weeks passed, then came graduation. The campus was buzzing, everyone dressed in their finest caps, gowns, heels clinching on tiles. As Deborah stood backstage, Dennis appeared, holding a single yellow rose. "For courage," he said, "and beauty." When her name was called, the crowd went quiet. She walked up, calm and collected. As she stepped up the stage, Dennis met her there and kissed her. It was slow, sure, and the world stood still. But in that kiss, her glass slipped and fell. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Deborah froze. Her hands flew up to her face, but Dennis stopped her, and then he looked straight into her eyes. They were a storm of galaxies, burning gold and endless brown. He smiled. "I'm still here." And just like that, the curse shattered. The goggles cracked on the ground like broken chains. A gust of wind swept through the hall as if something ancient had been released. Her eyes shimmered, alive and free. The crowd was stunned. Some clapped, others cried, and Daisy watched from the corner, defeated, her empire of fear crumbling in silence. Deborah stepped into the light, her full self for the first time. Weeks passed. Deborah tried to stay hidden, quietly slipping through the halls. No longer the mysterious girl with cursed eyes, but simply someone who had been broken and healed. But despite everything, despite the newness of freedom, she still found herself alone. That is, until Dennis transferred into the school. He was calm, thoughtful, brilliant, everything Daisy wasn't used to. She tried to charm him with her usual ways, the fluttering eyelashes, the flirtatious touches, the sparking laugh that had always been her weapon of choice. But Dennis wasn't interested, not in her games, not in her pretenses. Instead, he gravitated towards Deborah, not because of her mystery or the tragedy of her past. No, Dennis was drawn to her mind. The rage that had defined her began to dissolve. She stopped wearing heavy makeup, deleted her burner accounts, and focused on her daughter. She enrolled in evening classes to finish her education. Slowly, Daisy began to rebuild, not for revenge, but for redemption. Meanwhile, Deborah and Dennis' relationship deepened. The days turned into weeks, and their bond became something more than just friendship. Dennis would sit by her in the library, where they would work through assignments late into the night, sharing stories about their childhoods, about dreams and fears. They would have long talks by the lake, their laughter echoing in the air. The tension that had once surrounded Deborah's eyes, now replaced by the warmth of connection. Dennis had a way of looking at Deborah that made her feel seen, truly seen. And for the first time in her life, Deborah allowed herself to feel vulnerable. She began to let go of the fear that she was unlovable. Dennis wasn't afraid of her, and more importantly, he didn't pity her. He wanted her for who she was. On the eve of graduation, Deborah's heart raced as she stood behind the stage, her graduation cap in place, her goggles on. She was still the girl who had been locked behind the glass for so long, but tonight will be different. Dennis walked over to her, his voice soft but sure. "It's time, Deborah," he whispered. "Let the world see you." She shook her head, fear gripping in her chest. "What if you die?" He smiled gently, his fingers brushing against hers. "I won't." He leaned in and kissed her, tenderly, slowly, as if to savor the moments before a thought changed. And then the goggles slipped from her face. The world seemed to hold his breath. For a moment, there was nothing. No gasps, no screams, just stillness. Then Deborah opened her eyes, her true eyes, and met Dennis's gaze. Nothing happened. No death, no scream, no curse, just stillness, just warmth. The curse was gone. The auditorium erupted in gasps, then the applause started, slowly at first, but it quickly grew into a thundering roar. Deborah stood there, her heart soaring. She had never known a moment like this before. No longer the girl behind the glasses, no longer defined by her curse. She was free. As the applause echoed through the auditorium, Daisy stood frozen in the crowd. The shock on her face was evident, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had seen Deborah wear those cursed glasses for years, seen her as a strange, terrifying girl behind dark glasses. The girl everyone whispered about, the girl they all feared. But now, Deborah stood there, eyes uncovered. Daisy couldn't help but be struck by the beauty she hadn't expected. Deborah's eyes weren't monstrous, they weren't cursed or cursed looking. They were striking, a warm amber, shimmering with gold, alive with a depth Daisy had never imagined. For a moment, Daisy felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to laugh bitterly, but she couldn't find the humor. She had spent years mocking Deborah, calling her a freak, making cruel jokes with her friends, but now she realized how wrong she had been. As Deborah moved through the crowd, Daisy stayed glued to her spot, watching the interaction from afar. She couldn't tear her eyes away. What was she thinking? Deborah was radiant. It wasn't just her eyes, it was everything about her. Her confidence, the way she held herself, the calm grace that had always been there, buried under years of ridicule. Daisy's mind flashed back to all the times she had taunted Deborah, the cruel jokes, the whispered insults, the way she had used her power to make Deborah's life miserable. And then, that moment when she had pushed Simon to expose Deborah, to destroy her. Daisy's stomach twisted. For the first time, she realized the depth of her cruelty. Later that evening, Daisy sat alone in her room, staring at the mirror. Her reflection felt foreign. She had spent so much of her life building an image, a perfect polished Daisy, the one who never showed weakness, never let anyone see the cracks in her armor. But tonight, as she looked herself in the mirror, she felt a sinking realization. What have I become? She had made everyone around her believe that she was perfect, that she was better than Deborah, better than anyone. She had used her beauty, her charm to keep people in line. She had laughed at Deborah's misfortune, thinking that her life was somehow better because she was normal. But now, as she looked at her reflection, she saw something through the mask. She saw someone who had lost her way, someone who had destroyed the life of another person for the sake of her own vanity. What if I'm the one who has been cursed all along? The next day, Daisy walked through the campus, her shoulders hunched. She couldn't avoid the eyes of her former friends, who no longer looked at her with admiration. They no longer followed her, laughed at her jokes, or basked in her attention. Her cruel reign had ended. One by one, her friends drifted away. First, Bella, her loyal sidekick, stopped returning her calls, then Tasha, then the rest of the clique that had once made Daisy feel like she ruled the world. And now, here she was, alone, the queen without a throne. Her mind wandered back to the confrontation in the hallway, when Deborah had finally stood up to her, when she had finally exposed Daisy's secret, the one who had remained hidden for so long, her child. Daisy had never planned for her family to find out. She had kept her pregnancy a secret from her parents, pretending like she had it all under control. But when Deborah had outed her in front of the entire school, she couldn't escape the shame, the guilt, the crushing weight of her own lies. Her parents had found out. Her father had screamed at her, his voice thick with disappointment. Her mother had cried, clutching her in her arms, asking how she could have kept such a thing from them. And then, there was a look on her father's face when he asked, "How long have you been lying to us, Daisy?" The shame was suffocating. As Daisy sat on her bed, her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She opened it to find her mother standing there, her face soft but tired. "Daisy," she began, her voice quiet. "I know you've made mistakes, but it's not too late to fix things." Daisy's eyes welled up with tears, the weight of everything crashing down on her. "I've ruined everything, Mom," she whispered. "I've ruined my life, and I hurt Deborah. I was horrible to her." Her mother took a step closer, pulling her into an embrace. "No, you didn't ruin everything. You've just lost your way, that's all. You can change, but you have to want to." Daisy nodded silently, the tears falling freely now. She had always prided herself on being perfect, on controlling the narrative, but now she was faced with the harsh truth. There was no perfection in her lies, in her cruelty. A few days later, Daisy showed up at the school again. This time, her hair was natural, her face was bare, no makeup hiding the woman underneath the mask. She found Deborah sitting by herself on a bench, reading a book. For the first time, Deborah looked up and saw Daisy approaching. She didn't flinch, she didn't sneer. Daisy sat down beside her, a little awkwardly at first. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," Daisy said, her voice low. "I was cruel. I thought I was better than you, and I made your life hell for it. But I was wrong. You are strong, Deborah. You always were." Deborah looked at her, her expression unreadable. The silence hung between them for a long moment. Then Deborah spoke softly, her voice calm. "Thank you, Daisy. It means a lot to hear that." Daisy swallowed, feeling the weight of the moment. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to be anyone other than herself. For the first time, she didn't care about what people thought of her. Maybe I was wrong about a lot of things," Daisy said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I'm trying to be better." Deborah nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "We all have our demons, Daisy, but it's never too late to make things right." Months later, Daisy had changed. She worked at an NGO for single mothers, helping women find resources and support. She spent time with her daughter, learning to be a better mother. And in the quiet of her own reflection, she knew she was no longer the same person who had tormented Deborah. She had lost her friends, she had lost her reputation, but she had gained something more important, the courage to look at herself honestly, to see the flaws, and to begin the work of healing. And as for Deborah, she was still out there, living her life, her eyes wide open to the world. Deborah had survived, had thrived, and now Daisy understood something she had never realized before. It wasn't Deborah who needed to change, it was her. Deborah began traveling, giving talks about resilience, overcoming difference, and the power of embracing one's true self. She wrote a book called "My Eyes Were Never the Problem." Her words resonated with thousands of men, women, and children, anyone who had ever felt unseen. Dennis too began his work as a youth advocate, speaking out against bullying and for the importance of compassion and understanding. Their paths diverged but remained intertwined, forever connected by the bond they had forged, and their relationship grew stronger not long before he finally proposed to her.